of the World Conference of Religions for Peace, which is certainly one of the most effective and influential bridge-building organizations in the world in bringing the religions together. I think that it is, in terms of the leadership of world religions, it is without parallel. It is a great honor to introduce you. Can't say more than you're the top of the heap in that regard. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your too kind introduction, and it's a pleasure indeed to be here. My comments are very much focusing on the growing interreligious consensus against of a moral consensus against nuclear weapons themselves. I'd like to offer a kind of pre-comment and then offer just a few comments that I think lead towards a moral rejection of nuclear weapons. The pre-comment is, and I ask for people to use your imaginations, traditions are different, is to suggest that the world's religious traditions tend to prosecute their moral argumentation on two levels. And there are different words for this in each tradition, but nevertheless the two levels are helpful. One level is the normative level, and the other, for lack of a better word, I'll say, is the pastoral level. And Rabbi Noble, we have you here, and I'm going to illustrate just briefly this point with your own tradition, which gave the 10 Commandments, one of which is, thou shalt not kill. What's instructive is that very short moral imperative doesn't say, thou shalt not kill unless it's inconvenient or unless it's a complicated situation. It's a simple, unvarnished, categorical norm, thou shalt not kill. Now, at the same time, that same tradition and many others recognize that reality is complicated, that there are tragic situations where goods conflict, and where, in the limit, the least worst thing to do might be, according to some traditions, in very restricted ways, might be to kill. Very, very sober reflections. But what's really key is that the religious traditions don't ever elevate that conflictual adjustment to the complication of competing goods up to the normative level. If you do kill, it's always wrong. Even if in some traditions, at some moment, you might be doing the least worst thing in that given moment. And traditions differ on this, of course. But the key point is that one doesn't elevate that pastoral, that circumstantial, that conflictual analysis where goods conflict into the normative. And I think there's a value in holding that in mind as we try to think of the moral case for the use of nuclear weapons. Let me just run through a few. On the use of nuclear weapons, it seems there's widespread moral concurrence across the religious traditions. It's beyond the pale. It doesn't add up. They're intrinsically indiscriminate. There's no way for them to be proportional to the wounds that just war theory might allow some thoughts about, and they violate humanitarian law. So, like that categorical level that I described, thou shalt not kill, there doesn't seem to be any space at all for the moral use of nuclear weapons. What about deterrence? The question gets stickier in this area. Is it moral to deter a nuclear attack by having weapons capable of inflicting a devastating counterattack? Recall, the pure argument is not even about using these weapons, although that's a bit of an abstraction given the way the actual armaments are triggered and monitored towards each other. But is simply having them, is that a moral act? Several points seem essential. First, to get a clearer understanding of deterrence. Deterrence does not mean threatening other nations with nuclear weapons or imposing one's national will on others by threatening them. The offensive threat of nuclear weapons is, again, I think, largely consensually agreed among the religions, completely immoral. It's not a moral act. But what about, again, pure deterrence. I think this is a key argument for us to try to examine, and it relates back to my pre-comment. Let me acknowledge that there are a diversity of religious views, ranging from a sharp proscription against deterrence to a limited acceptance of it. Let me speak of the latter. Increasingly, religious traditions are recognizing that there can be only a reluctant, limited, and temporary acceptance of deterrence, and only within the horizon of all nuclear states vigorously prosecuting their commitments to eliminate nuclear weapons. This may correspond to what I described as the pastoral level of religious moral discourse. Buddhists might describe it as employing skillful means. We have them, how are we going to get rid of them? The key point, though, again, is that this state of deterrence is not a good in and of itself, and it cannot be made normative. It is objectively morally disordered. Deterrence represents a form of gross moral failure that can be at best tolerated while states resolutely and methodically disarm themselves. Failure to commit to concrete steps to disarm, failure to enter in good faith with other states to disarm, is a profound moral failure. It de facto presents deterrence itself as a norm. And I think this is where it is profoundly, indeed, disordered. Here, I think we have to be honest. The inaction of nuclear states regarding disarmament is tantamount to elevating deterrence to be the de facto norm. And I think that's seriously morally disordered. Along the way, almost all religious moral thinking is advanced. What about maintaining nuclear weapons? Even if we said, well, okay, we're not going to use them for deterrence, we'll just hold on to a few. I think we've already mentioned the moral incoherence of elevating deterrence to the status of a norm, but we also have to look at accidents. Is it moral to renew and maintain weapons of mass destruction when there is a real statistical probability of accidents? Unfortunately, probability and time work together. The more time, the greater the possibility or probability for accidents. And such accidents, potential accidents, involve the same factors of indiscriminate and massive death and damage already mentioned. What right do we have to subject others or even ourselves to such risks? This leads me to my last point on the question of the morality of the possession of these weapons. Both ancient and many modern forms of moral argumentation revolve around the reality of self-contradiction. We use our intelligence, our wills, and our industry to advance knowledge and human flourishing. Are we to use our intelligence, wills, and industry against themselves? Is this not a massive self-contradiction in which we subvert ourselves to undercut the conditions of possibility of our own existence? Do we have the right to impose collective suicide? Do we have the right to impose even the slow, cancerous suicide of the contradiction of deterrence that eats away at the conditions of possibility of our humanity? Are we to numb our moral sensibilities, subvert our intelligence, and hijack our industry so that we can accept the abnormal as normal? I believe intellectual and moral coherence demands that we reject this path of self-contradiction. Finally, let me suggest that we need to update our concept of security, and that this updated notion of security can help us to frame again the imperative for nuclear disarmament. In 2006, Reverend Chung, you were present, 800 religious leaders gathered in Kyoto, Japan for the 8th World Assembly of Religions for Peace. Together, they advanced a notion of shared security. Yes, we need state security, because the integrity of borders must be respected, but that's not enough. Yes, we need human security because the well-being of people within borders must be honored, but that too is today not enough. Today we need to advance and implement shared security. Your well-being is mine, and mine is yours. We are no more secure than the most vulnerable among us. This is true in practical terms, for no one is immune to the threat of nuclear weapons, but it's also true in moral terms, because all of our religious and other great moral traditions recognize that we are obliged, indeed we truly live, when we are in relationship with, cooperating with, and caring for each other. Is this possible? Religions, each in their own way, would give us the strength to say yes. And what is the alternative? Thank you.